For the record, will you please state your name and spell your first and last name?
Ronald B. Kosman, R-O-N-A-L-D. Last name is spelled K-O-S-M-A-N.
And Mr. Kosman, by whom are you employed?
By the Village of Pleasant Prairie Police Department
In what capacity?
as a patrol officer.
How long have you been employed as a Village of Pleasant Prairie patrol officer?
22 years.
Were you employed as a Pleasant Prairie patrol officer in late November 1998?
Yes, I was.
Was there a time that you went on a deer hunting trip?
Yes, there was.
And when was that?
Would have been the weekend before Thanksgiving of November of 98.
When you returned from your hunting trip, did you discover that you had any voicemail messages for you at the police department?
Yes, I did.
Tell us about those voicemail messages.
There was a message from Julie Jensen, and she asked that I call her as soon as I returned from my trip. There was a second message, again from Julie Jensen, and stated to call me as soon as possible, and if she were to end up dead, Mark would be her first suspect.
So when you got that message, do you remember what day it was that you got that message?
Would have been the 24th of November.
What did you do when you got that message?
I immediately went to our chief of police and to Sergeant Ratsberg and explained the situation. And I then contacted Julie.
Tell us about the contact that you had with Julie.
I gave her a call and she asked if I could stop over after 10 o'clock. She wanted to talk to me. She sounded confused, a little afraid. And
Now, you were familiar with Julie Jensen's voice?
yes, I was.
So you knew Julie Jensen as of this time.
Yes, I did.
And how was it that you'd come to know her as of that time?
Throughout the years, I had approximately 40 to 50 contacts with Julie Jensen.
And what were the 40 or 50 contacts you had with Julie Jensen concerning?
And Judge,
The majority of them,
excuse me, I have an objection that I've previously placed on the record. If the court would like me to further state the grounds, I'm happy.
Necessary. It's the objection's overruled.
That means you can answer the question, officer.
the majority of contacts I had with Julie Jensen were for harassing phone calls or other strange incidents occurring around the home.
What kind of strange incidents?
Excuse me just a moment. Do you want a special?
Not at this moment, no.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Chambers.
Thank you, Your Honor. What sort of unusual circumstances were you describing besides the harassing phone calls?
Pornographic pictures being left around the residence.
So as of November 24th, you were familiar with Julie Jensen's voice.
That is correct.
So then you went to see her?
Yes, I did. When I called her, she asked if I could stop over after 10 o'clock. She was afraid that she didn't want to say much over the phone. She felt that Mark may be recording a telephone conversation she was having.
When did she relate to you that she thought Mark might be recording the phone conversations?
When I contacted her that morning of the 24th.
Over the telephone or in person?
Over the telephone.
So after this phone conversation that you had with Julie Jensen, what happened next?
I then drove over to their residence, and I met with Julie Jensen at that point.
And about what time was it, if you can recall, that you met with her?
I would say it would be shortly after 10 o'clock, probably within 10:15 or 10:30.
And this was on what date?
November 24th.
Tell us about the meeting that you had with Julie Jensen on that morning.
Julie expressed that she was getting a little bit concerned with some of the behavior of Mark, being he was very secretive, spending a lot of time on a computer, and when she would try to look in and see what he was doing, he'd appear that he was trying to hide a screen, and also complaining that she wasn't romantic enough.
Now, what was her emotional demeanor when you commenced this conversation with her?
I would say confused, scared, and somewhat emotional.
And as you two continued to talk, did her emotional state change or did it remain the same?
After we had talked a little bit, and basically she had expressed to me that she had taken some pictures of what was being left on a day planner, and some things that she could get off the computer. The more we talked about certain things like that, her demeanor seemed to calm down.
And were you able to ascertain from what she was telling you as to why her demeanor was calming down?
I think she just needed someone to talk to and maybe get some reassurance that everything was going to be okay.
So she told you she took some photographs?
Yes, she did. She told me that the neighbor had photographs and also a note, and if anything were to happen to her, they were to be turned over immediately to either myself or Sergeant Detective Ransford.
And when she told you about the note and the photographs or the film, what did you ask her? What did you say then?
I asked her if she wanted me to have them at that point, and she agreed to give me the roll of film.
But not the note?
She, at that point, said she did not want to give me the note because she didn't really think Mark would do anything because of the 3Ds.
Okay, she started out indicating that she thought her husband was trying to kill her?
She made one reference that with everything that she was reading, made it look like Mark was trying to make it look like she was going to commit suicide.
But by the time you got to the point where you were asking about this note and this film, she changed her views, or were her views still the same as near as you could tell?
Meaning?
At the time that you were talking about the note and the film, was she still expressing fear that her husband was trying to kill her and make it look like suicide, or had she changed her views on that?
She had changed her view at that point and said she would give me the roll of film, but not the note because she really didn't. She just thought maybe her emotions were running a little wild and felt that Mark would not harm her, either her or himself or anyone else.
And you saw this transformation occur right in front of your eyes?
As time passed, as we talked, her demeanor seemed to change, to calm down.
So how much time elapsed between the point where she was upset and distraught and appeared to be indicating that she thought her husband might be trying to kill her, and the point where she'd calmed down and she was thinking that maybe she was just emotionally overreacting to things?
Approximately maybe a half hour to 45 minutes.
So you spent a fair amount of time with her that day?
That's correct.
Did she ever get you the film?
Yes, she did.
So you waited there while she went and got the film?
We went outside, and she went to the neighbor's house to get the roll of film, and I stayed in the front yard.
How many rolls of film did you get?
I believe it was one roll.
And so she brought back the roll of film, and then what was the understanding between the two of you as to what was going to happen next?
I told Mrs. Jensen that I would take the roll of film and we'd get it developed. And I also explained to her that if at any point in time she felt any fear of staying there, to contact the police department immediately, or if there was some other place that she could stay. I offered to try to get her some help for Women's Horizons, or if there was a relative or someone else in the area, if she felt compelled that something was going to happen, to please take that course of action.
And that seemed like pretty good advice to you?
At that particular time, yes.
And what about Julie? What did she say in response to that advice?
She basically told me that she thinks everything is going to be okay, that her emotions were just running a little wild, and having the opportunity to speak with someone, I think, calmed her down.
What did you do with the film?
I took it down and had the roll of film developed.
And then what did you do after you'd had the roll of film developed?
After I picked up the pictures from being developed, I brought them back in, and I viewed them at that point with Sergeant Ransford.
When did that occur?
Would have been, I believe, might have been the same day, or it might have been the 25th, I'm not sure. I don't recall the exact date.
And where are those photos? Well, when you and Sergeant Ransford looked at the photos, did you see anything there that would cause you to believe that Mr. Jensen was trying to kill his wife?
At that particular point, I didn't. I'd have to review the pictures again at this particular point, but there's really nothing that sticks out in my mind.
Okay. Well, when we find those photographs, we'll show them to you. But tell me this. Nothing leapt out at you at that point when you looked at those photographs?
I'm sorry?
Nothing leapt out at you when you looked at those photographs?
Just the list that she had also expressed concern about, which were aspirin, razor blade, and syringes, which she told me was not a shopping list, that neither herself or Mark would use those objects. And those were, I do recall those being written down on his day planner and being photographed.
You remember about how many photos there were?
I would say probably 20 to 24. There may have been more, I don't recall.
Now, after you and Sergeant Ratsberg reviewed those photos, did either you or to your knowledge, Sergeant Ratsberg, ever take those photos back to Julie Jensen and indicate your thoughts on them?
I did not. After we had viewed them, I entered them into evidence. And I did not have any other dealings with Julie Jensen after that conversation on the 24th.
You know, there was a Mr. Voigt that thought there was a squad car that stopped in front of the house after those photos had been turned over to you. That wasn't your squad car?
Objection to any suggestion that there was a squad car. He doesn't know there's a squad car. Either he was there or he wasn't there.
Well, I think he's testing his memory. The objections overruled.
I don't recall going back to Julie Jensen's after I had the roll of film developed.
So you don't recall telling Julie about your findings with respect to those photographs?
No. At that point, a lot more of my time was being spent. I was a court officer as well at that point, and a lot of my time was being taken up in court. That's when Detective Ratsberg did more of the investigative portion of it.
Well, at some point after these photos had been turned over to you, you heard that Julie Jensen was found dead.
That is correct.
And were you at the scene that day?
No, I was not.
When did you find out that Julie Jensen had died?
Because of my past dealings with her, I was notified sometime that afternoon after 3 o'clock. My shift had ended. I was home for a little while, and I received a call from our chief at that point advising me that Julie Jensen had passed away.
And did you consult anybody else in the police department on that same day or not?
That same day?
Yes.
No. I just asked our chief if he wanted me to come to the scene, and he said no, that we had adequate personnel there at that point.
We're going to get back to those photos in a minute because they're being marked as an exhibit, but let's talk about some other photos. You'd indicated that in the years preceding Julie's death, you'd responded to that residence on numerous occasions because of harassing contact and photographs and so forth.
Pornographic photos that were being left around the residence.
Do you know when that course, when was it that Julie Jensen started first complaining about this course of conduct?
I believe it would have been right around the same time I had the first contact with her, about 94, 95 in that area. About 94, late 93 and 1994.
And so back in 94, 93, 95, whenever this was that this first started, what was the complaint at that time?
Her complaint was that she felt that someone may be being too close to the home, that they were leaving those types of photographs there, and she was starting to feel very uneasy. She did state, however, that most of the time that photos were found, Mark Jensen had usually found the photographs and found them outside the residence.
So she was telling you that Mark Jensen was finding these photographs?
Yes.
Well, he stated most of the time.
Most of them.
Okay, she found some of them too.
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. And did they produce those photographs to you?
I'm sorry?
Did they show you these photographs?
Yes.
Tell the jury what kind of photographs were being left around the house.
They were pornographic photographs of men and women involved in various sexual acts, including oral sex and the ejaculation of a male onto a female's face.
When you talk about oral sex, you're talking predominantly cunnilingus or fellatio, or both?
Both.
Did any of the women that were depicted in these photographs bear any resemblance to Julie Jensen?
At one point.
Now, how many times do you recall responding to the Jensen residence over the years preceding Julie's death regarding these harassing phone calls and these photographs?
On a rough estimate, I would say probably 30.
So maybe once a month or so?
Objection.
Sometime,
That's not once a month.
It doesn't, it's not clear that it is. Although the witness can answer, and I did, apparently, so I suppose that it's really not something that I would sustain an objection.
there were times that it would go maybe 4 or 5 months without any kind of contact with either Mark Jensen or Julie Jensen. And then it would seem that the annoying phone calls and the pornographic pictures would start appearing again.
Did you ever propose to Julie Jensen or make any advice to Julie Jensen as to what she could do to assist the law enforcement in conducting an investigation into these matters?
I advised her that we could start putting a trace on the phone, and I also advised her at that point to start keeping notes, a little notebook concerning dates and times of phone calls.
Do you have any recollection, now as you're sitting here, or any estimation now as you're sitting here, about how many photographs you recovered from the Jensen residence during the course of this multi-year series of complaints?
I would have to give you a rough estimate, and I would say probably between 50 and 60 photographs.
And I show you this photograph that is marked as Exhibit S-197.
Well, Judge, I renew my objection to S-197.
There's, on the eliminate?
In
Or
limine
proceeding?
and the general subject matter under 90404 sub 2 and 90403 and 90402
Overruled.
and due process.
Overruled.
So I show this photo that's marked as states Exhibit S-197. And I ask you if you can identify that photograph.
This was a photograph that Julie Jensen had given me, I believe it would have been in August of '98.
Is there a note on the back of that photograph?
Yes, there is.
And whose handwriting is that note?
It is Julie Jensen's handwriting.
And what does it say?
It says found 7/3/95 in truck.
And did she indicate to you when she turned over this photograph to you that who found it in the truck?
She stated Mark in. There were also some other pornographic pictures, which were not, the only photograph that is in color is the one that you just showed me. All the rest appear to be either Xerox copies or something made off like a copy machine.
So this was the only photograph that you recovered in that multi-year period?
There were others that were recovered and entered into evidence, but apparently our chief, whoever was the custodian of evidence at that point, I believe had advised them to get rid of them.
But in terms of,
I want to be clear on this. This one is the only one of all of the photographs which you had received over the years that was in color?
That is correct.
And those that were destroyed then were all black and white?
That is correct.
All right, go ahead.
and were they on photographic paper, or were they just, did it appear that they'd been Xeroxed out of a photocopier?
It seemed to be off a photocopier with regular paper. That's the only one that had any kind of color boarding or anything written on the back.
And this is a photograph of an apparently nude woman whose face is right immediately over a man's erect penis.
That is correct.
Now, those other photos that were photocopies, or the other photocopies of photos, did they depict similar things, or were they, it was a wide variety of pornographic poses?
It was kind of a wide variety. On some there was writing, and others there were not.
What kind of writing, if you can recall?
There were writings that would be on there like, remember when we did it this way? Or is he as big as I am? Things along that nature.
And the photos that would have the language, is he as big as I am, were those photos that depicted a penis?
Yes, it did.
Now, initially, when you'd commenced this investigation, did Julie Jensen indicate to you whether she had any suspects in mind for this behavior?
On the very first complaint, she felt it may have been a man that she used to work with, that she had a brief affair with.
Do you remember what that person's name was?
Perry
Tariqa?
That's correct.
So in the course of, were you the only Pleasant Prairie officer investigating this course of conduct, harassing conduct?
The first time I had met with Julie Jensen, she asked if she could contact me if she had any similar problems that would occur. She had some complaints in the past, and different officers would come to take the report. And she said she was just very embarrassed that she would have to keep repeating to different officers that she had an affair.
So she only wanted to deal with you?
With one officer, and at that particular point when I went there, that's how it evolved.
So when there was a complaint from the Jensen household, the first choice would be to call you there?
She would call the police department and ask if I could stop by.
And then you'd come out there and you'd hear about the complaint?
I'm sorry?
And then you'd come out there and you'd hear from Julie about the complained behavior?
That is correct.
And over the course of time, did you attempt certain investigative techniques in order to ascertain the identity of the person causing these problems?
Yes, we did. We had set up a couple of different phone traces.
And when you'd set up the phone traces, what would happen?
The calls would stop immediately.
I object to the foundation. I don't believe he has any personal knowledge.
Rephrase your question.
Well, what was the purpose? Tell the jury what you're talking about when you put it. Was it trap and trace? Is that what you put on the phone?
It was a trace through Ameritech. You can call an 800 number and advise them that you are having prank phone calls. And it had been reported to the police department. She was then instructed to give the Ameritech, the phone company, a case number or event number that she had contacted the police. And then they would put a trace on the line so that they would record any incoming calls to that residence.
Now, how many times did you recall over the years having a trap and trace or that system you just described put in place?
Object. He's never said that there was ever a trap and trace.
Well, whatever you just described.
That one was in 93.
Were there any others after 93?
Yes.
How many times, from the time that you first became involved in this case up until the time of Julie Jensen's death, how many times, if you can recall, did you institute such a procedure?
Objected, unless this officer clarifies that he instituted this procedure as opposed to someone else and what his foundation is.
Well, how many times do you recall requesting of Julie Jensen that she institute this procedure of placing this trace system on the phones?
4 times, including, that would be starting with the first one in 83.
And each of those 4 times, when the trace was installed or the system was installed, what happened with respect to the harassing phone calls?
I would stop by and check with Julie Jensen to see if she had received any phone calls, and she had advised me that the calls had stopped.
Each and every time?
Correct.
Now, around the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th time, did you become suspicious that the person that was making the harassing phone calls was getting tipped off?
Objection to relevance.
Overruled.
After the 2nd time, Julie made a statement to me that this person always seems to be 1 step ahead of us. She felt that it was still very possible it may have been Perry Tariqa that had been making the phone calls. But I, at that particular point, also realized that after the 2nd time, the calls did stop, which didn't make a lot of sense to me at that particular point, because someone would have to know that there was a trace on the line and to stop calling.
Well, actually, it does make a lot of sense under a certain circumstance, doesn't it?
Objection to his commentary.
Okay.
Well, you said
It made sense to me at that point.
There's no question. That was a sustained
Why don't you
objection.
ask a question, Mr. Jensen?
I will. Thank you, Your Honor. After the 2nd time, where this trace was put on, and there were no harassing phone calls, what did you begin to suspect?
I became very suspicious that it would have to be someone who was aware that the traces were being put on the line. At that particular time, there were only 3 people that knew the traces were being put on the phone.
Who were those 3 people?
Objection to his knowledge.
Sustained.
Well, how do you know the people that knew about this trace? To your knowledge, who told you about, who knew about the trace?
I had advised Julie Jensen to give that case number to put a trace on, which she was going to do, at which point she told me she would also tell Mark.
So who were the 3 people then, to your knowledge, who knew of this trap or this trace system being placed on the phones?
Mark Jensen, Julie Jensen, and myself.
So, come time for the 3rd trace, when the harassing phone calls started up again, did you offer any advice to Julie Jensen?
Yes, I did.
What did you tell her?
We went again with the phone trace.
And when you asked for her to do the phone trace for the 3rd time, did you give her any advice about who she should not specifically tell about the trace?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear the question.
When you asked her for this 3rd time to institute a phone trace system, did you give her any advice as to who she should specifically not tell about the trace?
It was either the 3rd or the 4th, and I asked her if she would not tell anyone, including Mark, that this be just between her and I. I explained to her at that particular point my concerns that Mark may be making the phone calls. She did not feel that Mark would do that. And I told her at that particular point, without having Mark having any knowledge that the trace being on there, if the calls stopped again, then we definitely had some other problem. But at that particular point, my suspicion was it was Mark making the calls, and I told Julie I wanted to rule Mark out as a suspect at that point.
So then you don't know if this is...
I think we'll take a break at this point until 10 minutes to the hour. Please don't talk about the case during the break.
Please all.
Let's continue, and you wanted to have 30 seconds, and I'm going to give you that.
Judge, I objected as Mr. Jamboys began getting into the harassment area. As the court is aware, we've had considerable discussion on that topic prior to trial in terms of motions in limine, and the court has heard arguments from both parties and briefs, has received briefs on those issues, and the court made it clear last time that it was going to allow that type of evidence from Officer Kosman regarding the harassment. So I wanted to just make the objection as we turn to that area. I believe it is not appropriate or admissible under the other acts rule 90404 sub 2 that it's
Mr. Albee, please.
Yes.
You made the objection, and I overruled it. It's clearly in the record. If you want to, in one sentence, restate it, that's fine if you're uneasy about whether it's adequately stated, but I do not want it recited and re-argued because I already decided. Or if you want to add something new, fine.
90403, unfair prejudice. 90402, relevance, due process, right to a fair trial. That's all I was intending to do, Judge. Records, I believe all this stuff is protected, even if I don't say a word right now.
Why say it?
But, well, you know what? Because that's a terrible mistake if the Court of Appeals disagrees with me, as the court mentioned yesterday. So I believe it's all been preserved. I don't, but that would be no assistance to Mr. Jensen if I'm wrong. So I apologize for taking up the time, but I just
no
I feel
apologies
it's
necessary. I agree with the general strategy. I just don't want to re-argue it. You can restate it, but don't re-argue it.
That's fine.
They're all overruled. All right. Anything else?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Let's ask the jurors to come back in. All right, continue, Mr. Jones.
I think when we left off, you were talking about trying to figure out a way to rule out Mark Jensen as a suspect in this case, correct?
That is correct.
And by this case, I'm talking about the harassing calls, or in the photographs being left around. And so, what did you say to Julie in order to alert her to the means by which you could rule out Mark Jensen as a person that you suspect of putting these, making these phone calls and leaving these photos?
Julie didn't think that Mark would be the one that would be making the phone calls at that particular point. And I advised her that it seemed that someone unknown how would come up with the information that a trace was being put on the phones and the calls would mysteriously stop. At which point I asked her if she would keep a secret with me, and it would just be her and I that would know about this particular trace. And at that point, if it was Mark that was making the phone calls, we would find that out. It would be a civil action at that point. If she didn't want to pursue it, it would not be pursued criminally. And at that particular point, she agreed to the trace.
And she agreed to not tell Mark about the trace?
That is correct.
And so then you did another trace?
Yes, we did.
And did the harassing phone calls continue?
Can we get a date for any of these traces, please?
Well, let's talk about this trace where you'd asked Julie to not tell Mark about it. Do you remember about when that trace occurred?
I believe it would have been either late 95 or in 96.
As you're sitting here now today, do you remember if that was the third time the trace was put on or the fourth time the trace was put on?
It would have been the last time would have been the fourth time.
Okay, so this is the fourth time the trace had been put on.
Yeah, that's correct.
And each of the three preceding times, as soon as the trace was put on, the phone call stopped.
That's correct.
So this fourth time, what did you say to Julie about not telling Mark?
Just not to tell him that it would be our secret. And again, if it were to turn out that Mark had been making the phone calls, she could handle it any way she wanted to. If she wanted to handle it criminally, it could be done, or she could just dismiss the whole thing. But I would, at that point, like to rule Mark out as a suspect. If the calls continued, then it would lead me in a new direction for the investigation.
So you put the trace on the fourth time?
That is correct.
And what happened?
After about 3 or 4 days, I had not heard anything from Julie Jensen. So I stopped by think it would have been probably about 4 days after the trace had been activated, to find out if there had been any more phone calls.
And what did she say?
She said the calls had stopped.
And what did you say?
Judging by her demeanor, she would not look me in the eye. She was looking down. And I asked her at that point if she had told Mark about the trace. And she said she had.
I want you to try to remember the precise language that you used when you asked Julie about this. How did you say it to her?
I asked her if she told Mark, and she said yes, she had. And I believe I made a comment at that point of, Julie, why did you do that? And kind of in a disgusted language. And apparently I was a little loud because I do recall one of the children being asleep inside the home and woke up, so I may have been a little boisterous at that point.
So you were upset with her?
Absolutely.
And did she offer you an explanation as to why she told Mark?
She did not want to keep any more secrets from him. She felt bad because she had the affair, she kept that a secret, and she wanted to keep no more secrets from Mark whatsoever.
So after that, you never put any more traces on the phone call, did you?
No, we did not.
Now, tell us about the location of some of these photos, as you recall. Over the years, did these photos show up in just one place, or were there a variety of places where the photos were allegedly popping up?
Judge, if we could have some specifics as to times and places.
I'm sorry, Judge, I didn't hear.
That's for cross.
So that means you can answer the question, officer.
She said basically that, again, Mark had been the one finding most of the pictures. They would either be left outside the house, near the front area, the front door, by the bushes, around the garage, on the deck, and near the pool, and also somewhat by a little storage shed that they had as well. And she did tell me at one time that Mark had found some pornographic pictures in a boat that was parked inside the garage.
Did she ever describe an incident where she found the pornographic photos?
No.
Well, did she ever tell you that she found the pornographic photos, or did she always say that it was Mark that had found them? Or don't
She always, most of the time, she said that Mark had found the photos. Other times, photos were found, at which point I did not ask who found them. I just assumed that Mark had.
Now, during the course of this investigation, early on, Julie had indicated that she suspected Perry Tarica, correct?
That is correct.
And did you undertake to ever find out Perry Tarica's whereabouts?
She had told me that she had heard from some...
Objection, hearsay.
Well, although it's close, I don't think it's actually offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted.
I believe it absolutely.
No,
It's Mr. Tarica's whereabouts.
Is, come forward. Prove the matter asserted. The objection's overruled.
So did you ever hear from Julie Jensen, her perception of what she knew of Perry Tarica's whereabouts?
She said that she had heard it.
Let me think about this.
Your Honor, I'll just withdraw the question and go on to something else. Did you ever talk to Mark Jensen during the course of this investigation?
About the allegations, no.
Did Julie ever describe to you Mark's claims that he had received some of these photos at work?
Phone calls and photographs at work.
Did she describe to you the manner in which these photographs were allegedly received at work?
they were being left on his vehicle.
Now, I'm going to show you a series of photos, and for the record, they're marked States Exhibit S196, I'm sorry, S173 through S196. Have you seen these, Council?
They're marked. Are these in order?
They're in reverse order, so you start, yeah, they're in 173. This is 173. Just go ahead and take a few seconds to correspond with those to your phone. Well, Council's comparing the photographs to his photographs there. I'll ask you some more questions. Aside from proposing this trace to capture the find where the phone calls were coming from, did you ever suggest any other alternative investigative ploys or techniques that Julie or Mark Jensen might resort to in order to find out who's leaving the photographs around?
The placement of a camcorder at his place of employment.
Did you give him any advice as to where to place the camcorder?
I advised him to park in his normal location, and if he could find a spot inside the building where he could record his vehicle, to record the vehicle, and at any point, if you were to find any photographs when he came back out after work or this lunch break, to call me immediately.
And do you know, to your knowledge, did they ever do that? Did they place any video cameras either in their child's bedroom or in some vicinity to Mark Jensen's truck at work?
I offered him the use of a camera, and he, at that point, said that he had a camera that he could use.
So you did talk to Mark Jensen at that point?
At that point, yes, I did.
And when you were talking with Mark Jensen at that point, did he offer you any descriptions of his understanding of what was taking place at work with respect to these photographs or harassing phone calls?
At first, he said that the camcorder could be put in a conference room, or it could be aimed out a window and he could be able to record his truck. He then advised me that that would not work because the conference room was used by all the associates. And he didn't want to explain to all the associates that his wife had had an affair, and that's why he was recording his truck at that point.
Well, did you suggest to him he didn't have to say anything about his wife having an affair, just that he was receiving harassing phone calls and photographs being left in his truck?
I'm sorry?
Did you explain to Mark Jensen at that point, you can leave a video camera there and you don't have to tell anybody that you're working with that your wife had an affair many years ago. You can just tell them that you're receiving harassing phone calls and harassing photos being left in your truck.
Objection argument.
Sustained.
Are you done, Council? With it?
Getting pretty close. So you can get them started. I'll be done.
Did, oh, you're done? Okay. I'll wait till you're done here. I don't want to do a piece of Did you ever learn from Mark or Julie Jensen as to whether or not they ever put a camcorder anywhere to try to catch the person or persons that were allegedly leaving these photographs around?
I was advised that the camera had been used.
Who advised you of that?
Julie Jensen.
Did she tell you if they found anything?
She said they had not.
Did she tell you who placed the camera?
She said that Mark had.
Did Julie ever indicate to you what Mark was saying about these harassing phone calls, what he would say to her about these harassing phone calls, or what he would say to her about these photos that were being allegedly left around the house?
He just was angry that she had the affair and basically blamed her for all the problems.
And how was Julie reacting to this accusation that all of these things were taking place because of that affair she'd had so many years ago?
I was taking emotional strain on her and her marriage.
All set.
Now, Officer Kosman, I'm going to ask you to, we're going to go through these photos one by one. In fact, you know, I wonder if I can display them up here. This magical machine over here. There we go. Do you want me to have him identified before? Because I was going to just put him up there, but he hasn't identified him yet.
You just want to see these are the pictures.
Officer Kosman, I guess before I put him on the machine there, I'll have you identify these photographs. Let's start with Exhibit S173 and these through S196. Just flip through those photos if you would, please. You got that turned on yet? Okay. Oh, you don't know how to turn it on? Okay. Don't push the wrong button. Yeah, we don't know what had happened. And I just want you to go through them and see if, are those the photos that you developed off the film that was provided to you by Julie Jensen?
That is correct.
Thank you. Now we'll go through them. Did we get that thing turned on yet, Kathy, or not? Do you know? Not yet. All this newfangled stuff, huh?
Did you turn it on?
I believe it's on. The light's on. And there's a thing here, it looks like it's an on-off button.
Push that big one.
Now, here, I'll go back first. I show you this item that has been marked as State's Exhibit 173, and is that a photograph, one of the photographs that was recovered when you developed the film that Julie Jensen provided to you?
That is correct.
And now we'll zoom in. And it reads, own drug supply. And does it say Nicotrol NS? Is that what that, or?
J maybe?
The witness identify what it says.
Do you know what that, what does it say?
It may be NJ.
Okay.
It's hard to make out.
And then read the rest of it.
Aspirin, bottled booze, razor blades. Not sure what the other word is.
Is that Librium?
Librium, shells, Defazio, Terry, patches, shells, syringe, bag handles.
Bag handles, okay. And so you, when you examined that list, were you able to fathom any significance to the things on that list?
Not really, with the exception of maybe the syringe. It doesn't seem to be an item that a lot of people would use.
Bag
Or
handles?
that and the second one, Nicotrol and the Librium as well.
So you didn't really, you looked at that, you read that, and it didn't really tell you a whole lot about what Mark Jensen's intentions were, did it?
Objection. Could be speculation. This witness is part of the no. Sustained.
Well, I guess what I want to know is, when you looked at that, what was your impression as to whether or not that was indicative or supported Julie's suspicions that her husband was trying to kill her and make it look like a suicide?
At that particular point, I didn't feel that it had anything to do with the fact that you may be trying to make it look like a suicide.
Now, directing your attention to State's Exhibit 174. This also is a photograph that was developed from the film that you obtained from Julie Jensen.
That's correct.
And can you read what that says up there? Let's see if I can. Can you read what that says?
Appears that it says low tolerance, maybe funky, neck. I'm not sure what the other one, funly or something along that line. 2 prior weekend.
It says funky, 2 prior weekend.
Does not mean anything to me.
Okay, doesn't mean anything to you. And then it's underneath that, what does it say?
I'm sorry?
Underneath funky, 2 prior weekend, what does it say under that?
Which one are you referring to?
Okay, what's beneath the 3rd line? In other words, what's in the 4th line there?
Is it funly, 2 prior weekend?
Funky, is that funky?
It may be funky.
And then under that?
Pen, sweet, 63102.
Well, underneath funky, 2 prior weekend, what does that say? Right here.
Second
Rate?
I believe it does say that.
And then beneath that?
It appears to say pen, sweet,
And then underneath that?
thinking.
And underneath that?
Not sure what that word is.
And underneath that is $sign?
Is underneath, whatever that word is a symbol used for money.
And then underneath that, what does it say?
Muthus? And I can't read what the second one is. Envious of me or envy of me?
Underneath that,
Maybe new,
well, under that, does it say has something, everything that he wants? Or have?
everything that he wants.
And underneath that,
Obviously, not sure what that word would be.
obviously successful, big producer.
Okay, successful big producer, manager.
Maybe I can read that, move that up a little bit to make it easier to read. Let's see. Is that easier to read then, officer, if I do that for you?
Yeah,
Because I'm looking down here and I'm thinking, gee, it's easier for me to read. I can't read it, I need to pull it up there for you. And then what does it say under the word obviously?
manager, have own branches you put together, make and all look easy. And boys, with the line under that appears to be oils, PDE, comma, NE, the initial DD, initial HI, with a star next to the initials MCD at 6'5", and the star again with the initials MCK.
And that didn't mean anything to you, did it?
Judge, this would be improper opinion testimony from this witness.
If he knows, he can answer.
Well, and all I want to know is, you had this film developed, you looked at these photographs, and you understood what Julie's accusations were. Did this tend to support that or refute it?
Well, objection, I don't think it's proper opinion.
Okay. In your estimation, did this information, what was depicted here, did you see how it was relevant to Julie's concerns?
Some of it, yes.
Okay, tell us what you thought was relevant to Julie's concerns.
Object, this is improper opinion, Judge.
No, he's not asking, he's asking about his historical opinion as opposed to what he now thinks, and as to what his reaction was to having seen this information.
I don't think if at the time his opinion would have been admissible or relevant.
I think overall.
So at the time you looked at this, did you see anything here that you thought might be relevant to Julie Jensen's concerns?
Maybe the envious of me. Obviously successful big producer, along with the put it all together and make it look easy. Oils and what the initials may have stood for.
Now, at the time that you looked at this, you were unaware of any search on the internet for oils under toxic substances.
That is correct.
You were not aware of that at the time.
No, I was
I don't
not.
believe there's any search for oil. That was
Well, gentlemen, would you come up here?
Now, directing your attention to the State's Exhibit 175. State's Exhibit 175 depicts State's Exhibit 175 depicts another photograph that was contained in the film that Julie Jensen gave to you, correct?
correct.
And I would say you probably can't read those, so I'm going to try and get a little bit closer to it. First of all, this looks like a calendar page, correct?
That is correct.
From November of '98.
That is correct.
And then there's entries from the 1st through the 25th down to the 30th. anything there that you could perceive that would be significant with respect to anything happening that would cause Julie Jensen to believe that her husband might be trying to kill her?
Judge, same objection, speculation by this witness and improper opinion testimony.
Well, officer, at the time that you were looking at these photos, your purpose was to try to figure out why Julie took those photographs, correct?
Correct.
You're trying to discern some connection between these photographs and her accusations or her concerns that her husband was going to murder her and make it look like suicide, correct?
Correct.
And so you examined each one of these photographs carefully with that purpose in mind, didn't you?
I viewed them with Detective Ratsburg, and Detective Ratsburg at that point was going to take over the investigation. So we had briefly looked them over just to see if there was anything that really stood out that would make it apparent.
Well, let's put it that way then. Is there anything about Exhibit 175 that really stood out to you, or to your knowledge, Detective Ratsburg?
Not really.
Directing your attention to State's Exhibit 176. And that's another photo that you recovered from the Julie Jensen's film, or the film of Julie Jensen?
That is correct.
I don't know if I can arrange this so it can be read. It seems like the light is... Maybe I should turn the light off. Let's see. Does that make it easier to...
Can you perhaps move the focus, make it smaller?
Make it smaller.
No, that doesn't help.
Not a bad idea. Maybe I can do it. Now, I hold it just exactly like that. Can you read what that says?
No foundation to maybe relevance, manipulation, doesn't want to be there, idolized him, drinking and sex, doesn't trust him, belittle, abusive, passive aggressive, and minimize.
And you didn't have any idea what that was referenced to?
At that particular point, I thought it may be kind of comparing the good side to a bad side.
Directing your attention to State's Exhibit 177. Back up so that you can see the photograph. That again is a photograph that you recovered from the film that Julie Jensen provided to you.
That is correct.
And the only thing there says October 1998, daily record of events, and the time it appears to be a time, 8:40. Is there anything else on there that was of any significance to you?
No.
Directing your attention to Exhibit 178. Again, that's a photograph that you recovered from the film that Julie Jensen provided to you.
That is correct.
It shows the date of Friday, October 23rd, and the time 12:30. Were
That's
you able
correct.
to discern any significance or divine any significance to that?
Thought it may be an appointment with a client.
But nothing that would...
I object to strike.
Strike the answer. That's just a supposition on his part. It could be
Yes. There was...
car fixed or something.
Yeah, there was nothing there that would link up this particular photo or the thing that's depicted in that photo to Julie Jensen's suspicions, as near as you could tell, wasn't it?
Overall.
No, there was nothing at that point.
And then directing your attention to the State's Exhibit 179. This is a photo that you recovered from the film from Julie Jensen,
That is correct.
and it depicts the date of Tuesday, October 20th, 1998.
That is correct.
And again, there's just a daily record of events and a time.
7:54.
And you don't know the significance of that.
I did not know the significance of it, no.
Checking, and State's Exhibit 180. Again, it appears to be pages out of a calendar, daily calendar, correct?
Correct.
From October of 1998. Can you read the date up there? Can you read that?
October 13th.
And the other.
But that's the October of 1998.
And let's see. You don't have any idea what SIA means?
On the 21st, I believe the initials are SIA, and underneath it is written dinner.
And then on the 27th, it's
27th being circled with the word regroup.
And you didn't know what that meant either, did you?
No, I did not.
And then the first, there's a star.
That's correct.
You didn't know what that meant?
No, I do not.
Second, another star with the word Appleton underneath it. You didn't know what that meant?
At that point, I was assuming that the stars meant that you would be in Appleton at that time.
But you didn't know what it meant.
Judge, I object. It's just, this whole line of questioning is calls for speculation or it's not.
It's supposition, and you're asking him about what it means to him, and
No, I'm not.
and you're asking him for his interpretations of it, and no, the objection is sustained.
Your Honor, if I may be heard on this issue, my purpose is not to have this witness testify as to the meaning of these things, but rather to testify they didn't mean anything to him.
Well, that's very clear, so why go through every one of them?
Okay. Well, because I want the jury to see what's on here, Your Honor. Because it may mean something to the jury, even if it didn't mean anything to him at the time.
But you don't have to ask questions. You can just ask him if he sees it, and then not ask him about his interpretation or lack thereheof.
Okay, I'll move to that. Thank you, Your Honor. So then on October 8th, well, I can't read that from here. Let's see. The word, what did I
I
do?
believe it was Scott.
What did I do here? Did I do? Oh, I guess I can. What did I do now?
Now you've done it.
Oh, I guess so. They shouldn't give me this machine, should they? Just the word Scott, correct?
Correct.
And then on the 9th,
Mariel
and then
Dawn.
the word dawn.
Dawn.
D-A-U-N.
Dawn.
And then the 10th says
Call them all.
then on the 16th, Mike, Fred, for Marriott, right?
Correct. Marriott.
And then 17th, wedding call FGHT. You don't, that's what that says?
Here's what it says.
22nd, SIA, correct?
Correct.
And the 23rd, let's see, 22nd says SIA, there's no asterisk or star above it. 23rd, there's a star and an SIA, correct?
Correct.
24th, there's a star and an SIA, correct?
Correct.
And then the 29th, IDLYBAR. You don't know what that means.
No.
30th,
Door County.
Door County. 31st, Indy.
Correct.
And you know what any of that meant.
No, I didn't.
That was S-180.
Judge, I object to continuing questions about whether he knows what it meant.
Overruled.
Now, directing your attention to S-181. S-181 is another photograph of another that was recovered from the film that Julie Jensen provided to you.
That is correct.
November 2nd, the word Brookfield appears.
Correct.
And on the 8th, there's an asterisk and the time 3:55 is noted, correct?
Correct.
And on the 9th, it says Kosny 1. And then what is that underneath? There's Storberg 4.
Correct.
That says? On the 18th, school conference 5:15, correct?
Correct.
On the 23rd, it says dinner May. Is that there? What is this? What are the words after dinner? Can you see? Is it M-N-Y or something?
Could be M and Y.
24th, the word is that session?
Session. Correct.
And then on the 5th, Thursday the 5th, there's an asterisk, blueprint MGA, is that? MGR, 1:30 and 9:30, correct?
Correct.
And on the 6th, there's an asterisk, blueprint.
Correct.
On the 7th, an asterisk, blueprint.
Correct.
And then on the 12th, that's it. DNVR and I don't know, what is that, session?
Correct.
13th an asterisk,
Correct.
14th an asterisk, and the letters PGNT.
Correct.
The 19th, here. I'm not doing that, I think the machine's doing that. The 19th, APPT 11, and then it says Scott underneath that, correct?
Correct.
21st, SHW.
Correct.
27th, looks like the word poor, doesn't it? Or maybe not, I don't know. So
I can't make a note.
on the 28th, it says dog 1050, and then laser, correct?
Correct.
Then on the 26th, printed the word Thanksgiving underneath there, correct?
That is correct.
On the 27th, the word poor appears, correct? Is it poor or pool? Can't make
It might
that.
be pool. Maybe an L at the end or a C.
Pool. Okay. And then the 28th, oh, dog, 10, 50, 11. Okay. So that was the State's Exhibit 181, which was another photo recovered from the film that you obtained from Julie Jensen.
That is correct.
And then we're looking, this is Exhibit 182. And again, this is a photo that you recovered from the film provided to you by Julie Jensen.
That is correct.
And does that appear to be O-I-L-S, oils?
Correct.
And then underneath that, D-D?
Correct.
And under that, M-C-D?
Correct.
And under that, M-C-K?
Correct.
And under that, B-T?
Correct.
And under that, B-A?
Correct.
And under that, H-A-L?
Correct.
And underneath that, Mystery, 1016?
Correct.
And then going to the top again. Let's see if I can. That's backing up VSOA.
Correct.
And then the word dawn, D-A-U-N.
Correct.
Ring,
Correct.
married, telling me.
Worried.
I'm sorry, worried. Okay. Thank you, counsel.
Yeah. Appears
Worried,
to be worried.
telling
Correct.
me. Correct. And then don't think it's going to work.
Correct.
It's up there. And then quotes.
Quotes. Correct.
And that was from October 28th, correct?
That is correct.
And directing, go back again here. Directing your attention to this exhibit, I'm sorry, I forgot the number, Exhibit 183. Exhibit 183 is a photo that you recovered from the film that was given to you by Julie Jensen, correct?
That is correct.
And this is for Friday, October 30th, right?
That is correct.
And it reads, I thing,
Correct.
MCK,
Correct.
MCD,
Correct.
big questions, big issues,
Correct.
blueprint.
Correct.
Is this going to work for you?
Correct.
Then Brookfield and a number of telephone. Correct? And then what's this? Her.
Correct.
And then directing your attention to State's Exhibit 184. This is another photo that was recovered from the film provided to you by Julie Jensen.
That is correct.
And this is October 27th, Tuesday.
Correct.
And the word oils, correct? Is that correct?
That's correct.
and then PDR, GLM, PE, and is that SL?
Did you say PDR, Mr. Chambliss?
I thought it said PDR.
No.
Maybe
PD, what did I miss, did I hear it wrong?
Maybe I said PDR. I don't know. I was trying to read it, and I thought it said PDR, so maybe that's what I
It
said.
doesn't look like PDR to me.
Okay, what is it? Thank you, Judge. I'll try to get it. What does it look like to you?
it may be an E,
PDE, okay. GLM,
correct?
NE,
Correct?
SL, or, well, NE or WE. Looks like one of those things. And then SL, does it look like B?
Looks like B.
And then under the word oils, there's DD,
Correct.
HI,
Correct.
MCD, MCK,
Correct?
BT, BA.
Correct.
And then, does this say daily pen shop? Does that look like to you?
I'm not sure what the second word is.
And the number underneath it is 414-276-8900.
That is correct.
Underneath that it says LeGrand 185.
Correct.
Did you find out what that number was for?
Officer Kosman, did you ever find out what that number was for?
No.
Okay. And then there's a mark in front of the word question, and then a dash, and an E and a dash. Correct?
Correct.
And then underneath that, funky tolerance.
Correct.
And underneath that, fishing.
Correct.
And under that, evening blueprint.
Correct.
And underneath that, blueprint Saturday/8.
Correct.
Saturday.
Or Sunday.
Slash Sunday.
Sunday.
Slash Sunday, I'm sorry. And underneath that, looks like dawn, D-A-U-N, correct?
Was a line through it, correct?
And then the word new with a line through it,
Take that as now.
Now.
W.
okay? And then
Door County.
with a line through it.
With a line through it, correct?
And then underneath that, appropriate verbiage.
Correct.
Directing your attention to the State's Exhibit 185. Go back here so you see the whole picture. Is the photograph you recovered from the film provided to you by Julie Jensen?
Yes, it is.
And that's for Tuesday, November 3rd.
That is correct.
And the word, is that,
It appears to be court. C-O-U-R-T.
and then 2.5 acre new? Or is that now? 2.5 acre now?
Looks like now.
25 acres equal
1,000 feet square.
one-fifth mile each side,
Correct.
and then a minus sign or a dash, and then 75 M, correct?
Correct.
And that says Wisconsin loghomes.com, correct?
Correct.
And then a circle, it says 253 in the circle.
That is correct.
Judge, could I have an instruction that Mr. Kosman is, or Mr. Jamboys are not in any better position than anyone else to determine what is said, that everybody's
Yes.
going to have to make their own determination.
I think that.
I'm even in a worse position, I think.
Pardon me?
I'm in a worse position because everybody's correcting me, so.
And the point is a good one. You can see for yourselves what the exhibits say, and it's your job to decide what they mean. And neither the officer nor Mr. Jamboys, nor me, nor anybody else is in a better position than you to determine these things unless ultimately they're linked up to something else, and that's shown by evidence. So, any question about that? Okay, well, thanks.
And I'm sorry, and now I'm directing your attention to State's Exhibit 186. And that's another photograph that was recovered from the film that you obtained from Julie Jensen, correct?
That is correct.
It's Monday, November 2nd.
Correct.
And it reads, big questions / big issues.
Correct.
Are you happy?
Correct.
Why chase the funky?
Correct.
Is the banter going to work for you? Really?
Correct.
What? Is that what that said?
Yes.
Aspirin over the weekend.
Correct.
Correct?
That is correct.
And then what, how, why? And then Joe, it will be on your desk when you get back. Or should or something?
Should.
Should I drop off activity? Correct?
Correct.
And then the word cabin, 26 by 24 / 624, correct?
Correct. Looks like 16 by 24.
16
16 x 24.
16 by 24 BR.
Correct.
COOT P21.
Cost per square foot.
Oh, cost per square foot. See, I'm not very good at this. And then greatwood.com, correct?
Correct.
WildernessLogHomes.com.
Correct.
WisconsinLogHomes.com.
Correct.
New Court Financial.
Correct. That is correct.
Direct your attention to State's Exhibit 187. There's another photograph that was recovered from the film that you obtained from Julie Jensen.
Can you put that in there at a different attitude? Because otherwise we'll all have stiff necks.
Otherwise what?
We'll all get stiff necks.
Oh, like this?
Well, then we'll get them stiff the other way.
Well, Judge, I'm doing my level best here.
Well, level's not the problem. It's the attitude. You need to move it 45 degrees.
They're like that, huh?
Very commendable.
Now, let's see. Now, this is a photograph that you recovered from the film that Julie Jensen provided to you.
That's correct.
And it's November 1998, daily record of events, correct?
Correct.
And up there is the words, the letters CCI,
Appears to be CCI.
and then troop leader,
Correct.
Ed test, December 7th.
Correct.
Is that explorers or explorer?
Explorer.
Dash font, F-O-N-T. Times now, Times New Roman.
So what it appears.
Courier, new.
Correct.
Font, no, font, something or other. Med.
Size.
Font size, is that what that is? Font size? Okay, font size, med, M-E, like as in, M-E-D, like as in medium. Then the word windows,
That's correct.
dash 1024 by 768, 256 color.
Correct.
Small font,
Correct.
withdrawn, lays on bed, knees pulled up to chest,
Correct.
correct?
That is correct.
And then $200 star account, correct?
That is correct.
The word Kendall,
Correct.
Tom, Wright, return. Is that Tom, Wright, return?
Correct.
Let's see. Model number 24, decorum.
I'm not sure what the number was before that.
Number
Might be
20
211.
No, oh, number 211, okay. DECO.
Decorum.
Okay. Number 562135, Indiana.
Correct.
Direct your attention to State's Exhibit 188. This is a photograph you recovered from the film that Julie Jensen provided to you.
That is correct.
Depicts November 1998 daily record of events.
Correct.
CCI, and then underneath that EFII, and then underneath that MRK.
MRK, correct.
And across from there it says Tom,
Correct.
and underneath that it says puked on carpet over weekend. Can't make out. Something or other into it with
Into
weather.
weather.
To weather. I'm sorry, got into it.
Would you, well, let's take a break. And we'll return at 1:15. And please don't talk about the case during the break.
Please all rise.
Now,
On the record or after?
on the record. You can be seated, and you can step down, officer. And I don't know if it makes any difference to your going through these. I will tell you that it is very evident to me that a number of these entries are trading symbols for stocks.
Could be.
Well, just, I'm not saying, stop or anything like that. I'm just saying that if you're wondering about it, it certainly looks that way. But anyway, a couple of things. Number one, tomorrow, I think I told you previously, I have a hearing at, I've changed it back now to 11:30, so we're going to stop at 11:30 tomorrow until 12:30. So that'll be the lunch break tomorrow, or maybe 11, maybe it'll be thereabouts anyway. The second matter is you had filed some sort of a motion this morning, Mr.
Judge, I've submitted a one-page document that has 3 proposed jury instructions. The first instruction I'm asking the court to give. The second instruction is if the court rejects the first, it's a lesser requested alternative to the first one, and then the third one, I guess I'm asking for in any event. So I'm asking for those 3. I'm asking for one of the first 2, although my first alternative is the first one, and then for the third one to begin.
All right, well, I want the record to fully recite what the reason that the testimony was admitted yesterday, and I'm not going to give the instructions you request. And in fact, the third alternative that you say you want given regardless it is improper for a party to humiliate a witness without cause. If you find that either party has done so, you may consider the remainder of that party's evidence in that light. There's absolutely no legal authority for any such instruction, even if a party willfully humiliated a witness without just cause, which I do not believe occurred in this case. There's no authority for the proposition that the court would thereupon instruct the jury that they should somehow punish the party for that kind of conduct by giving a different consideration to the evidence. That's absolutely without legal authority, so under no circumstances would I give that instruction. As far as your first alternative requests, first and second alternative requests, the record should reflect that the awareness by the defendant and Julie Jensen of John Jacques Joseph is a highly relevant issue in this case due to the late-night searches which were likely made by whomever was researching poisons and methods of death on the internet. It is known that at some point Kelly Jensen gave information about Mr. Joseph to the defendant, but it is disputed between the parties as to when that communication occurred. It is undisputed whether Mrs. Jensen would have had any knowledge about Mr. Joseph, but the defendant claims that it will be explained in final argument. There is evidence from which the jury could conclude that Kelly Jensen has not been fully forthcoming on the witness stand regarding the timing of the discussion which she had with the defendant regarding John Jacques Joseph and whether it occurred before Julie Jensen's death. Further, there is evidence from which the jury could conclude that the defendant has attempted to influence Kelly Jensen's testimony. After having been admonished about perjury, Kelly Jensen modified her prior testimony and conceded that the disclosure about Mr. Joseph to the defendant, and she said there may have been more than one, but conceded that the first disclosure about Mr. Joseph to the defendant could have occurred in 1998, which likely would have occurred before Julie Jensen's death. It was necessary for the court to further specifically admonish Kelly Jensen about her obligation to testify truthfully after she gave an answer which could reasonably be heard to suggest that she did not have to accurately testify unless the prosecution had evidence with which to impeach her. That the disclosures of Kelly Jensen's sexual history and the apparent fixation of the accused about types of sexual interludes that Kelly Jensen had had with other persons, the comparison of their performances with his own, and the length and girth of their penises in comparison to his own would be such an extraordinary incident in most people's lives that it could reasonably be expected that they would be able to place it chronologically in relationship to another major incident, such as the sudden death of a co-adulterer spouse. And that is particularly true when the questioner was taking notes about the descriptions of other people's penises, that the jury could reasonably conclude from the claimed uncertainty by Kelly Jensen about the timing of the disclosure that she was lying, and further that the reason for her to lie would be the highly incriminating nature of a disclosure which occurred before Julie Jensen's death, a significance which Kelly Jensen has acknowledged she realized. That in order for the jury to understand the extraordinary nature of this kinky behavior, so that there might be an ability by the jury to make an informed determination about whether the disclosing event was such that one could reasonably be expected to be able to place it chronologically, it was necessary for them to have an understanding of the strange extent of the disclosed information. So that's the response that I have to what I think are your totally uncalled for suggestions that the court should instruct the jury that an error was made in receiving this evidence. And I might add that the evidence is also relevant to the issue of the identification of the source of the photographs left at the Jensen home, about which Officer Kosman has testified this morning. Due to the writing, "Is he as big as I am?" which could suggest that the defendant, who could be found to have a sexual fetish about his penis size, was a likely source of the photograph. So, did you want to say anything else?
Yes, I certainly don't think that proposing an instruction was uncalled for. I continue to believe that this is grounds for mistrial and renew that request. I also believe that while that this instruction is appropriate because its relevance does go to the timing of the disclosure of a past encounter with Jack Joseph, that is the relevance. The state wants to then make arguments from that point that I guess they'd be entitled to do. But the whole purpose of that at the time was an effort to establish when such conversation took place. I respectfully disagree with the court that it would be such an unusual disclosure. I suspect that, as with many matters sexual, there are things that certain people do and others don't. And if the kind of activity is something you do, then it's not unusual for it to come.
Well, if you're in this idea that there's nothing unusual in the sexual world, I guess you could buy into that. But I think it's pretty odd for a man to take notes from his paramour regarding the performance of other people and the length and girth of their penises and write it down. I think that's very weird, and I think it's something that most people would remember.
Well, here's my point. The court's, I think, statement about how weird it is exactly why it should be excluded under 90403, because it's going to be used to suggest he's weird and therefore weird enough to kill his wife. That will be the suggestion.
Well, at the point of this record, I don't think that the jury is going to be any prejudice. And no matter what happens, I think that the jury is not going to have a favorable view of the accused, no matter what happens in this case. And I
would be piling on then, and I don't think that's appropriate. Right. And if I do have one more point regarding the court having to say it's weird. And let me just take a different hypothetical example. A foot fetish might be viewed as weird. It might be viewed as something that most of the population does not engage in. But if you're with somebody that has a foot fetish, it no longer becomes something unusual because the person always has a foot fetish. It becomes something that's a normal part of the relationship that's continual. It's not an unusual thing. You might remember the first time that you encountered somebody with a foot fetish, but as to when discussions about the foot fetish after that occurred, you'd expect perhaps something to be continual because because that's what that person is into. So I don't think there's anything, if you assume some sort of fetish as the court is, that it then becomes unusual, that it would be a more common thing rather than an isolated event if that's the person's particular interest. And by the way, I hear nothing unlawful or illegal about any of that conduct. I think it is just piling on about somebody's apparent unusual sexual interest, and that's likely to prejudice his ability to get a fair trial in a homicide case, which doesn't have anything to do with the sex. So,
Did you want to say anything briefly?
Well, Your Honor, it would be such what counsel is arguing is that sure, this was unusual the first time perhaps, but Kelly became acclimated to the notion that her husband or boyfriend was very preoccupied with these matters. But nonetheless, that even makes it more like the first time she heard this conversation, it certainly stuck in her mind. And I would say it would be as shocking an equivalent as a wife coming home, walking into the bedroom and finding her husband wearing her lingerie. That would be as shocking, and I guarantee you that any woman, the first time they discover that, the few who have discovered something like that, I guarantee you they can remember when it happened. And that was the reason that I went into the details in the manner in which I did with Mrs. Jensen. It wasn't for the purpose of humiliating her, nor was it for the purpose of embarrassing her or her husband, the defendant in this case. It was because he was getting her to lie about it. That's why we played the tape of the defendant telling her that conversation never occurred in 1998. It's clearly a central part of the defense in this case. It was alluded to during defense counsel's opening statement. It is certainly something that I had the opportunity and the right and the responsibility to refute. And that was why that came in. You stated so eloquently just now when you read the justification, I think, for the Court of Appeals when they review this record, because it is unusual evidence. And you excluded that evidence at the beginning of this trial. There was a motion limiting to keep it out, and you had ruled that the unfair prejudicial effect outweighed its probative value. But neither you nor I could anticipate that Julie Jensen would get on the witness stand and lie through her teeth on this issue. I'm sorry, Kelly Jensen would get on the stand and lie through her teeth, which is what she did until she was reminded of the penalties of perjury, which is entirely consistent with what she did at the forfeiture hearing. She was lying under oath at the forfeiture hearing until she was reminded of the penalties of perjury, and she consulted with her attorney, and then she told the truth. And that's what she did again here yesterday.
Judge, just one last comment. And to be clear, I honestly tend not to believe that discussions about past relationships and lovers is as unusual as it's being painted out to her. I have no evidence of that. I just suspect it's not really such an unusual thing. As to whether notes of that might be more unusual, who knows what Kelly Jensen would have known at the time. And I would note, Mr. Jamboys, for all this vilification of Kelly Jensen, who has a completely legitimate reason for what, and she clarified at the first hearing why it is that she hadn't included oral sex during the first time. I see none of his hostility, or he's not nearly so fired up about the admitted perjury of Rhonda Mitchell, which seemed to be
That's for your
just brushed off.
That's for your to the drain. Look, the Court of Appeals knows how all of us feel now, or will know if they ever get involved with the case, and so I don't think we have to say anything more. All right, anything else now?
What time was we back?
1:15.
Thank you.
And that's not 1:20.
And Your Honor,
No, I'm not talking about this morning, by the way. I'm talking about the break
oh, okay.
that we took. So, this morning, we can all forget things. And that's, by the way, if that happens again, though, you should call Ms. Gabrielle. She has a cell phone?
No, I was already here.
And I did call her. I left a message for her on my cell phone.
I'm not actually, I wasn't annoyed about this morning, but I'm just saying the breaks that I take that are supposed to be 10 minutes long sometimes take 20.
And I've got an explanation for that, but I'd rather not put it on the record.
All right. Thank you.